will take over for now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Can everybody hear me? I want to thank you for allowing me to be here. It's now my third time, so thank you very much. Again, I want to thank Arlene for making all the quilts, and what a precious love gift that she has done. I think this is my 5th presentation I've done with her, and also with John Purcellin. He's a videographer, photographer, and so John has a YouTube channel, and it's spelled P-E-R-C-H-U-L-Y-N. We'll let you know later, but that's his last name, John Purcellin. So we'll put it somewhere where someone can pass on the information to where you can see this recorded on YouTube. So we are here today. Let me get my notebook out. So I was in Bible school, and I did 60 units at Biola. And so this is one of my Bibles I had. And I'm in a church, different presentation than I've done before. And I want to thank God for the Greeks. Because if it wasn't for the Greeks, with the Apostle Paul passing out the gospel from the church of Corinth, Thessalonica, Ephesians, Galatians, it was because of Paul at Mars Hill, which the Romans call it, but in Greece they call it the Areopolis. Thank you. And so Paul had went up to the gentlemen that were Greeks, and he says, I see that you're all superstitious. He says, what about this unknown God that you're praying to? You're praying to 12 others, but you do have this one statue to the unknown God. He says, I want to go ahead and tell you, proclaim to you what his name is. And what was his name? Jesus. And that's why we live and breathe and have our being, is what Paul told the men. And the men were just, what? What are you saying? This unknown God. And they said, today is over, come back tomorrow. And he preached Christ and him crucified over and over again. The Jews, which were his brethren, he would go into their synagogues one Sabbath day after another, and they didn't listen to him. They thought it was anathema. They did not want to hear that Jesus was Yeshua Yamashiach, or that he was God in the flesh. So the Greeks took it and spread it throughout the whole world. So thank you that your forefathers, your fathers, grandfathers, everybody in your lineage was able to go ahead and propagate the gospel to me, an English boy, to where I can go ahead and accept him way back in '63. So I was 7 years old then, do the math. So I was 7 and in a Good News Club, and I was brought up Lutheran, and I now go to Rolling Hills Covenant. So hopefully it doesn't offend anybody. Don't I have to be Greek to come here? All right, well, thank you very much, because it's very important. And when I came here, instead of just presenting the quilts, I'm going, well, I'm presenting to 8 Greeks who have fought the fight, have been in the trenches, have done their warfare for us. And so just as Christ died on the cross for all of us, he fought the fight for us. So thank you very much for letting me share that with you. So when I was in school, I did take Hebrew and I did take Greek, but I always had to come along someone from Talbot and say, how do you pronounce this? So Chris is my interpreter for a couple of you who speak Greek. I'm probably not going to say the name properly. Please forgive me beforehand. So with these bios, I started from the oldest, who was born in 1924. Then there's a gentleman born in 1925, and then there's a gentleman born in 1923, 24, 25, 29, 31, 1940, following up with Nick, and Mr. White at 43, 1943. So thank you very much. John's heard me say this before, and so has our lead. It says in God's word that he promises us 70. Now a score is 20 years, so 3 times 20 is 60, plus 10 is 70. So he promises us 70 years, but then he goes on to say, but by reason of strength, I'll give you 80. I don't know what that reason of strength is. Is it physical strength? Is it spiritual strength? I don't know. But here we have men in their 90s, so I can't even find that scripture. So I just want to say that God has his hand, as I shared before, mightily upon this group. And I want to ask you to continue to do whatever you're doing to continue to give God the glory, because your years are passing on. So give us that wisdom that you have. 1923 actually. We're going to start with James Pacheris and Libby. Where's Libby at? Okay, Libby was the one who the daughter gave me the information. This is a 2-page bio that Gail had put together, and I'm glad she did. She can't be here today. She has a respiratory infection, so not COVID, but she says, you know those things called colds? I said, yeah. She was like, I think I got one. I went, So they're not too long. And so once we go ahead and present it, and the person comes up, we're going to have them stand over here next to Arlene, and Rachel, I've commandeered her, if she would please come up and hold it, and then John will take the pictures and we'll go from there. Does that sound like a plan? Yeah. Okay. So Jim Pacheris, yes. Libby was the one who gave me the information. He was born June the 14th of 1923 in Akron, Ohio, and he grew up in the same place. He went to Akron South High. In post-service, he went to the University of Akron and got his BS degree. And then, that was in 48, and in 1953, he got his PhD from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Military service. In the Army, February the 4th, 1943, World War II vet. And he got out March the 12th, 1946. When he got out, he was an E5. He tells me, no, I was a technician, 5th grade. So that is absolutely right. When I was enlisted, that would be a 2nd class. So that's a lot of rank in 3 years. He went up the rank really fast. His duty station, France and Germany. Jim was selected for the Army Specialized Training Program. The acronym is ASPT. He was assigned to the 11th Engineer Combat Battalion, called the Black Panthers. He sailed out of Boston in November of 44 to Glasgow, Scotland. And then he went to New Brighton, England for bridge training. And as you know, we went ahead and bombed all those bridges. And so the Germans, when they retreated often, would blow the bridges up behind them because they didn't want us to go across the Rhine or things of that nature. So we needed men like that to come along and put them bridges together so our armies could advance. So thank you for that. He went to bridge training in England. He crossed the channel, landed on New Year's Eve. He says that it was very cold and one of the coldest winters in Europe. There, Jim conducted training school on landmines, and he lived underground in forts that World War I veterans had built, thus shielding him from the cold. So he got away from the protection of the cold for a little bit. In Germany, Jim worked putting up bridges for transport to use, part of the 7th Army General Patch. And next to them was the 3rd Army underneath General Patton. Jim remembers being on an intelligence mission in Schweinfurt, Germany, to go through a factory and offices and open up all these safes that had been locked and all the drawers that had been locked. And they would put C2. Now I know C4, but I don't know, I haven't heard of C2. So I think they're probably the same. So it's like a clay that went around the safe, and you know what they're trying to do. They're trying to blow the safe up to get any of the information that maybe the Germans had left behind. His sergeant told him, use more. anecdotals I love. So Jim used more, and when it blew, the whole wall fell out. Just so it blew the safe up, blew the wall up, blew everything up.
I might have committed that right. Yeah.
Sir? Now, here's the issue that I kind of want back. So my father was English and my mother was German, but we were over in this country way before. But Jim decided that he was going to take a souvenir out of one of the drawers. He took a little black book and a slide ruler, and we want it back. So, yeah, so who knows what was in that little black book, right? And a slide ruler, so it's always kind of neat to hear what people, put in their pockets and things of that nature. Jim worked on water point on the Seine River in North France that provided filtered water to the chateau on top of the hill, he says, where the officers lived. And the troops are going through to that camp on their way home, so they had to have clean water. Winter was approaching, so another anecdotal is that Jim went up to his lieutenant that he actually names, and he says, hey, we need to bury these pipes or they're going to freeze. So of course the lieutenant says, here's a shovel. And he gave him one laborer that was a prisoner to dig and bury the pipes. One of Jim's Greek's friends from Akron had an aunt and uncle that were in France, an uncle, and he ended up getting the address to the family member that was in France. And he had a truck that had the water buffalo hooked up to the back, and he finally figured out the address. So he went ahead and unhooked the buffalo truck and went driving down the road. And there he visited his family members, and he brought them candies and soap. One more anecdotal, the last one. In France, he was told to go ahead and clean up the minefields that were around with a minesweeper. They did detect the mine, and they marked it with a hot cross bun. Connected them with DMT wires and would yell, fire in the hole! And then twist the handle of the hell box, which would send a shock of electricity through the wires. Jim remembers doing this after it had rained very heavily, and the ground was soaking wet. So the circuit, as you know, was broken. And not all the mines exploded. What did Jim do? Well, he's here today, so you know what he did. They had to go back slowly to trace all the wires that were buried in the mud to find the problem. While doing this, again, this second lieutenant, Theo, shouted out, Jim, I wouldn't move if I were you. He was about to step on a mine. His military awards, American Theater Ribbon. He has an EAME Theater Ribbon with 2 bronze stars, Good Conduct Medal, and a Victory Medal. In his civilian life, he married Diana Hondros, 1953, and currently widowed. His children are Libby and Dean, and he worked as a senior scientist at Hughes Aircraft. So it is my pleasure to go ahead and ask the 99, soon-to-be-year-old young man to come up, James Gutierrez.
I know, but it's good to hold your hand.
It's an honor.
close.
Oh, yes.
That's good. Thank you.
I'm a light bird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a 05, not an 06.
This will be on video. The tenants, you can watch.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and they maybe you can,
Anyone 05.
maybe here, maybe they'll have.
A light bird. Yeah, that's a dangerous job. Listen to him.
Oh, yay! That's so sweet. He did me so good. That was awesome.
Such an honor.
For us to. Your dad was a medic, so.
Yeah, he almost went to Korea. But God watched over you. Stepping on him. God bless you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, sir.
You want a picture of him with it?
John Berdanis. I don't see him in here. Okay. So will you be receiving? Okay.
No, you're the godfather.
That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we have your father who's passed away? Is that correct? All right. John Berdanis. He's not here, but he is here in spirit. And hopefully those who are close to him can show him the YouTube video. Remember how, as I shared, it goes background, military service, civilian life, and then anecdotes. John Berdanis. He just turned 98, January the 11th, born 1924 in Greenwood, Mississippi. At the age of 3, John was taken back to Greece by his parents to their home of, help me, Skopelos. Thank you. This is where John spent his childhood and the years after high school. In his teenage years, in early 20s, he helped with the Greek resistance. And this is where Nick was talking to me last month about it, or the month before. He helped with the Greek resistance against the Italian and German occupation on his home island. Education. He did 3 years of high school in Athens, Greece, until the Germans occupied the country, and he went back to the island of his military service. He was in the U.S. Army from 46 to 47, and then he jumped and he went over to the Navy. How rude. He went into the Navy from 1949 to 1954. The rank of his current in the Army was private, and then in the Navy, he became an E6. So I was a corpsman in the Coast Guard, but an officer in the Navy. And to get E6 is a lot of rank. And he did that in 5 short years, just as he did too, Jim. Rank at discharge, as I mentioned, was a E6. Duty station, Army, Fort Bliss, Texas, and then he went to occupation duty near Osaka, Japan. I know my father tells me that he was in the Navy, and he went to occupation Japan after they had dropped the 2 bombs, and we were there occupying that country. He was a crewman on board a mine ship in Japan and Korea. These are his military awards. Medals in the Army were Army of Occupation Medal of Japan, Good Conduct Medal, World War II Victory Medal. In the Navy, he received the Korean Service Medal and the Navy Good Conduct Medal. Civilian life. His marriage, his wife is deceased. I know it's not just Berdanis. Her maiden name is, thank you, ma'am. Say it again. Thank you. Bill, unfortunately, is deceased. I don't know how, with the children. And Tasia, and Jan. One boy, 2 girls. His work, he was in banking, bank management, and then a restaurant owner. And I remember they shared about he owned the Hamburger Express that was in Westminster. Yes. Community service, Greek Orthodox Church in Long Beach and here in Redondo Beach. And then he was part of the AHEPA, and that's the American HEPA. HEPA. Thank you. I'm learning, and I even went to Bible school. I forgot all my Greek. Anecdotals. So being born in the United States, John was an American citizen. However, he grew up in Greece. After June of 41, Greece was under the control of the Axis German and Italian troops. John was cut off from the country of his birth. So when Greece was liberated by the Allied forces sometime after the German surrender, John was able to show his birth certificate to the American authorities in Greece. The Americans asked him if he wanted to join the military in Greece or go back to the United States. And this is where I know I talked with Nick about this. He chose to go back to the United States as he foresaw an impending civil war in Greece. John was correct. The Civil War lasted for 3 years. Back in the United States, he was in the Army for about a year. And there's one gentleman here that actually got stuck. And I don't know which one of you gentlemen that it is, but I'll come to you. A second anecdotal. After almost 2 years back in Mississippi, John enlisted in the Navy. He was aboard the minesweeper in Japan and then in Korea. The minesweeper was to locate, cut, and make sure that these mines could not destroy any of our ships. He was on one ship, and he noticed that a sister ship rolled up next to her. And there was one gentleman that was on the bow. They hit the mine. And it goes to report that all lives were lost on that ship, except the man that was in the bow. And so he got thrown into the water, and then they went ahead and picked him up. So that is our 98-year-old John Berdanis. And we're going to ask Alex to come up and receive his book. How am I doing today?
I'm gonna get in here. Okay.
So we wish that John Berdanis was here, but unfortunately, he's not able to make it. So you will be presenting that to him, Chris? And then Jim, everybody was given a handout here. Rachel passed them out. And thank you for everyone to send in your picture to Gail. And then Gail formatted all of this. But Jim, quite handsome man. Stayed handsome all the way through, didn't you? Well, the next person. Yes. George. Now, his name is misspelled on here, but his name in my book is proper. So it's George E. Stavros, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. So George, thank you for being here. Born 1925, he too just had a birthday. So both of these gentlemen, the last two, one was born 1/10 of 24, 1/11, and then he was born January 10th of 25 in Castle Gate, Utah. Happy birthday. He grew up in Kenilworth, Utah. His education, he went to Carbon Country High School, Price in Utah. Here's his military branches. Dates of service. World War II vet. Thank you, sir. Was it for you?
Yes.
Best generation.
Definitely was. August 4th, 43 to April 23rd, 46. If that doesn't make you tear up, I don't know what will. Have these men go and march for us. It's wonderful. And he got out as a sergeant. Thank you, sir.
I didn't know that.
His duty stations. He was at Fort Douglas in Utah for basic training, and then he went to Camp Gruber in Oklahoma. He arrived in France, Marseille, and the 232nd Infantry Regiment of the 42nd Division on December the 8th of 1944, right in the thick of things. He was assigned to Task Force Linden on the 19th of December of 44 through February 5th of 45. He was reattached after that task force, and he had to tell us what he did in that. In combat from December 24th of 44 to May the 8th of 45 in Strasbourg, France. And he was also in Nuremberg, and Munich, and then Salzburg, Austria. And that was where the Germans surrendered. Occupation duty, Austria 9 May 45, all the way into 1946. He has probably the most coveted military badge that any of us would want. And you military guys, if you know what it is, shout it out. He has a CIB. So next to a Medal of Honor, it's nice to have that, and even a Silver Star, but a CIB, when men wear the CIB, it's the most beautiful ribbon that there is. It's a long rifle, like in the American Revolution, has a blue background, and it's rectangular in size.
What's the CIB stand for?
Combat Infantry Badge. So, thank you. You still have that badge, sir?
You have your combat infantry badge? The combat infantry badge, you have it at home? He does. On a plaque.
Yes. And he has a Good Conduct Medal, a World War II Victory Medal, American Campaign Medal, Europe, Africa, and Middle East, Eastern Campaign Medal, and he has a Bronze Star. Thank you. Does anyone know or pronounce his wife Helen's maiden name? Don Doulakis?
No, not hell, not.
D-A-N-D-O-U-L-A-K-I-S.
What was his last name?
Dulak. Thank you. Children of Michael, Steve, Tony, and Chris. He had 4 boys, and he worked at the DeCarlo's Bakery in San Pedro. He was the owner of Silver Skates, Wayfair, and Hot and Talk restaurants in Harbor City and Lomita. Wish I'd have known that then. Community service, Greek Orthodox Church in Long Beach and here, and then also the Greek American organization, Cretan and HEPA, and also Lomita Chamber of Commerce. Anecdotals. These details were told to Steve, his son. He was assigned to Company B of 232nd Infantry Regiment of the 42nd Rainbow Division. A show of hands was requested. Never raise your hand, right, gentlemen? A show of hands was requested for anyone who knew how to use a typewriter, and his dad, George, was the only one who raised his hand, and therefore he became the Company B clerk. Another anecdote. On the high seas for about 3 weeks in a troop carrying vessel, that'll make you throw up right there, George said that because of seasickness, the only food he could keep down was candy bars. Someone say beer. is candy bars. Anecdotal. The 3rd Infantry Regiment of the 42nd Division arrived first in Marseille. The Battle of the Bulge had begun to the north. The regiments were immediately ordered north to the battle zones. Thus, they were at the outset separated from the rest of the division and formed into Task Force Linden, and that's where it was. They were reattached 6 weeks later. And finally, which is sad, he helped liberate Dachau concentration camp. So he went in during the combat operations and went into Dachau and rescued all the POWs and unfortunately the atrocities that happened with the Jews. So big hand for our combat veteran, George E. Stavros. Sir?
Here, I'll get that. Come up, honey. George, let's go.
With her.
Let's go on the picture. We're gonna get your quilt.
Yes.
Okay?
And you notice that these gentlemen are walking underneath their own steam. That's wonderful.
Turn it around as well.
Dan, can you do another salute, please? One more. Salute him, Uncle George, salute him.
Well, thank you very much, sir. I do appreciate that. And get that CIB badge out and wear it here on your suit, because every single person in the military is going to recognize that and talk to you. Constantine, Gus Alex. Unfortunately, we have lost your father. So Chris will be receiving the quilt.
And Marianne.
And his mom, and his wife.
And his wife. All, yes, his wife. Sorry.
That was really ghastly.
No, it was
I
bad.
would duck down behind the podium.
No.
And his wife. Yes, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Chris, thank you very much for giving the information out. Your father, your husband, I do not have a date, but I just have born 1929.
January 31st.
Thank you.
When
Just
is
had a birthday.
January 31st, 1929.
January 31st, 1939 in Yakima, Washington, but he grew up in Spokane. He went to the universities of Gonzaga in Spokane and University of Washington, and then Long Beach State for his master's. Another Navy person served in the Navy from 50 to 52. He went into the ROTC program at the University of Washington and Gonzaga. I know I'm saying it wrong, participated in various training activities. He was sent to Hawaii for training. While he was there in college, he was drafted into the Navy, and he went to the Great Mistakes. So those guys that are Navy in here, you know what I'm talking about. The Great Lakes we call the Great Mistakes. And it gets so cold to go to boot camp there. Since Gus had worked in the hospital, they trained him as a corpsman. And it says or medic, but it was a corpsman. From there, he returned to Seattle, Washington, where he was scheduled to be shipped to Korea with the Marines. Since it was well known that corpsmen, which I'm one of them, back in '74 during Vietnam, they were always on the front lines, and I was with the Marines. And days of old, your father would have had a cross on his helmet, and that's what they aimed at. During Vietnam and during my time in Iraq, I had a Unit 1 bag, but you have to recognize that I was the medic or the corpsman. But yes, that was target practice for them. But thank God, at the very last second, he ended up going to the Naval Hospital in Corona, California. And he served there as a sole corpsman. He did EKGs and did other things as a corpsman would do, holding sick call. And then I have question marks for medals and awards.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I would probably think that he's probably got a good conduct medal.
Yeah, well,
And,
it's not in the records, that's the thing.
okay,
Yeah.
It
we
wasn't
didn't-
on his.
Yeah, so. we
DD
don't know.
214, yeah, probably Korea, since he went in 50 to 52. All
I
right.
don't know anything.
He's been married 67 years to Kay. Katherine, thank you. And we have Christopher Alex, Mary Ann,
Right here, Marianne Zipper.
and Angela.
And Andrew's.
Community service. He taught U.S. citizenship to immigrants for years and helped them become citizens. He also taught at the federal prison in Turtle Island. I was in the United States Public Health Service. As you know, I did 4 branches, and I was in public health. And that's one of the places I served was the prison, Terminal Island. So that's a hard place to go to. It's a level 5 maximum prison. He's involved for years in leadership here at St. Catherine's, and he's famous for his something booth.
Lucanico.
Thank you. Lucanico.
Greek sausages.
Thank you. At their yearly festival for the community. He's leadership for HEPA and the Cretan American Organization. We are proud to present and honor Gus. Ma'am, are you Kay? Are you coming on that?
No, you have to. You have to.
I'll get it.
Go ahead, Mom, you get it. All right.
Yeah, there you go, that's perfect.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you know what it is? That is so pretty. Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. We're so happy you made it to this point.
So proud of him. And I went to doctor. My dad did. Yeah, my father.
And I'm sorry for the loss of your brother. thank you very much, and I'm sorry for the loss of your brother. Yes, ma'am. Well, now we come to Tom Tragus, and we should sing you happy birthday, since it's your birthday in what, 5 days?
Another one.
Yes. So happy birthday. He's going to be 91. So it's just amazing, again, as I got up there and talked about how Paul, on his first missionary journey, his second missionary journey, and his third, made so many converts, and you're the offspring of that. So I just thank God for you. Mr. Tragus, you and my father went to the same high school. My father is born in 1929, and my mother was born in 31, but she was born a few months after you, and both of them went to Manual Arts. So, it's the same high school as my mother and father, Manual Arts, located downtown LA off of Vermont. So my dad will see this. He's raised in Los Angeles. His dad was from Jerusalem. So there's that connection again. He was Jerusalem born, raised in Jerusalem, and his father spoke 7 languages. He spoke Greek, French, Yiddish, Hebrew, Turkish, English, and I think one other, but I can't see it, I don't have it. He asked his dad, "How did you speak so many languages?" And his father turned to him and said, "That's easy, son. You have to learn how to count first. So if you want to do it in Spanish, uno, dos, tres, and do it in French. Anybody know French? How about in Greek? What's 1, 2, 3? So his father said, "That's easy. If you want to learn language, you first learn the numbers, because that's how you pay everybody." Correct, sir?
Right.
Can you hear me?
They can hear you.
Yes, sir. And if you think about it, that's pretty smart, right? I mean, learn how to speak a language because you're going to pay. His father fought in World War I against the Turks and the Germans, and he was awarded a Purple Heart. As I shared, his father was raised in Jerusalem, and as you know, if you've been there, I've been there a couple of times, there's 4 quadrants there, and there's the Jewish, Arabic, Christian, and the Armenian quadrants. And of course, the Greeks were in the Christian quadrant. Military service, here it comes. Marine Corps, Semper Fi, sir. He's wearing red. So that's some of my fond memories of being a corpsman with the Marines. They're tough, and they always took care of their corpsmen. I never had to clean my weapon. Never had to repack my bags, because the corpsman would say, "Hey Doc, come on over here. Let me have your weapon." And so I loved being with the Marine Corps. He enlisted on 7 December of 49. He did 2 years of service. His MOS, mechanic. He had a lot of different jobs being that mechanic. And according to his grandson, he got out as a sergeant, E4, in 51. So in 2 years, he made E4. Good job. He served with his cousin, who, according back then, you would get $1 for every day if you were in a war zone. That's what I understand. Is that true? $1?
They give me $1 for every day.
Every day, yes. So his cousin was in the war zone for 253 days. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. And of course, Thomas was also in a war zone. I forgot to name your wife, Evelyn. He served in Korea. He served in Korea, and he was the first Marine Brigade that preceded the first Mardiv in Busan. So the men at that table should just go up. Busan. We call it the Frozen Chosen. Unfortunately, in 1950, we went in there to come against the North Koreans. And the Army was on the left side of the reservoir, and the Marines was on the other side. And little did we know that the Koreans fought, but they were paid by the Russians, they paid the Chinese. And so these poor Marines and Army they burnt their rifles out, shooting at these Chinese that were coming over. They call it the frozen chosen because the reservoir is chosen and it was frozen. And the Marines unfortunately took a ton of casualties. If you've seen the documentary or read any books about it, it was a nasty place to be. And these poor men were not outfitted with the uniforms, and they, unfortunately, a lot of them froze to death. So he didn't fight in Frozen Chosen, but he was there, which I think would be worse. As I shared, I had 163 men die in my command in Iraq. He was mop up. And you know that we don't leave any man behind. And even today, we're looking for those who are KIA and MIA, and we're still finding their bones, and we're bringing them home to honor them.
What's KIA again?
Killed in action or missing in action. So they literally took all the frozen bodies, the dead Marines, and you threw them where? Back of a truck. And they just loaded these bodies one on top of the other, and they had to back out from where they were. They had to back out all the way down to Busan. It was a hard time to go back to that harbor. He shares that he helped a medic once with a man who got all shot up, and he's always wondering to today, he goes, what happened to that guy? I would like to know too. I'm sure he made it. I'm sure the corpsman took care of him. I don't have any military awards or honors. Can you share with me some of the things that you were awarded, sir? Military awards.
They gave me a couple of medals, and I don't know where
Well,
That's humility.
that is humility. Well, when we get to heaven, we're all going to be awarded a crown, and then we're all going to toss them at the feet of Jesus because, we don't deserve any of it. So that is humility. Thank you. Civilian life. His first business was a bakery called the Logistics Baking Company, located off Broadway. He bought, with money that he saved, and a car, and he put up collateral because his cousin worked in the bank, and he made $12 the very first day. And it was located off of 54th in Normandy in Los Angeles. So kind of like the Helms Bakery, right? Yeah? After working in the bakery shop for 10 years, he decides that he's going to go ahead and start another business himself. The Greeks are very good at this. They're very good at this. And be independent and run a bakery route where, of course, his cousin would bake the bread and then he would go ahead and sell it and deliver to places like the Helms Bakery for fresh bread to customers. Evelyn, as I shared, and him have been married 24 October. But I thought I saw somewhere else it was 30 October of 50. Yeah, there's a good historian here. I do know you have 4 children. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Okay. It is my honor and pleasure, Semper Fi. Will the Marine come forward and receive his quilt? Mr. Tom.
Remember your photographer.
Okay, sir.
stand right there so I can take a picture of Mr. Trigger. Mr. Trigger, sit close. You need to get close. It's so funny.
other side too?
Wait, Mr. Traeger, stay there.
Other side.
You need to stand it up long ways, long ways. No, because it's the pictures are long ways. There you go. That's okay.
There you go. Yeah, you are.
Mr. Traeger, look over here.
Just waiting day by day.
They're going to present, they're going to give it to you.
I know it's happening.
That's why I got it. And that's why I got it.
People are staying heads in it.
Good to see you. Same high school as my mother and father. Oh, got the Marine. So remember his birthday coming up. He's 91. Now we skip to a man who's a baby, 10 years younger, 81 years old. Nick Bowser. Nick and I sat down, I talked to Cecilia and Mary, and I shared that 2 months ago when I was here. I wanted to go ahead and get this background information, but we only got Nick's done. And he had me laughing so hard about some of his anecdotals that I'm going to have a good time with this one. So, Nick, he's a baby, 81 years old, but again, 4 by reason of strength. He's 81 years old, and he was born in, pronounce it, sir? Aeon, Greece. He lived there from 1940, when he was born, to 1951. Around that time, there were world refugees. The Germans had come in, burned down a lot of homes, including his. I don't know if anybody knew that. Being Greek Orthodox and having bishops, from 1940 to 43, Germans used to occupy the bishops' homes. And they would stay inside of the bishops' homes in that village. And an executive officer, I don't know, a German army, I don't know division or what he was of, but a German officer stayed inside his village's bishop's home. If one German soldier was killed by a Greek, Nick had shared with me that 8 Greeks were lined up and killed by the Germans. His father was lined up not once, not twice, 3 times. His father was lined up 3 times, but the bishop had enough influence on the XO, the executive officer, who lived in the home, and according to what Nick shares with me, saved his father's life 3 times. So there was a civil war, as we talked about earlier, 1949 in Greece. So if the Greeks wanted to come to the U.S., and I didn't know this, they didn't go through Ellis Island. So like my grandmother went through from the English side, and my great-great-great-grandfather from the German side went through. And I said, well, how did they go through? He said, well, here's the kicker. They had to have a bond. And I said, well, how much was the bond? $100,000. They had to have bonds put up for their assurance that they would be good citizens. This is 1951. A bond of $100,000 over 5 years was put up by his father's friend, who owns a restaurant and gave his dad a job when he got here. That's quite commendable. They went from Greece to New York to Springfield, Missouri. Well, then you lied the first time. Massachusetts. I think. I said, Springfield, Massachusetts. God, I should have you read this. Uncle Andrew, Dad's older brother, he rented a house for 2 years until they bought their first house located at, I got this one, 125 Moreland Street. Yeah. At 11 years old, I asked him, what do you do? He goes, well, I got different jobs in Missouri, Massachusetts. At 11 years old, he got a job being a, here, wait for it, chicken plucker. Did you know that? Chicken plucker. And I sat there at that table, and I said, well, how many chickens did you pluck? He said, well, I could pluck about 15 to 20. He said, I only worked on a Saturday. I said, how much did you earn? I earned $5 and a chicken. I said, oh, aren't your hands hurting you? He goes, oh no, I used a steel drum. My mind raced to him grabbing a chicken, cutting its head off, and throwing it in the steel drum. He goes, no, that's not how it went. And I said, well, thank you. How did you do it? No, I just held what steel drum is turning. Oh, sorry. His feathers are going everywhere, and I could just envision him with these feathers all over him. 15 or 20, chickens that he did, and got $5, and he also got to take the chicken home to his mom. So I love that anecdote about it. He said that his mom was a seamstress who worked from 3 to 11. So I'm sure he got in trouble then if both parents worked at the same time, but he told me no. His father worked in that restaurant where the man had put the $100,000 bond, and he worked from 7 to 3. So they always kept an eye, Sister also became a seamstress, and she dropped out of high school. So in high school, he went to Chestnut Hill High, and he graduated in 1958, where I was 2 years old. He went into the Army Reserves, 58 to 63, and from 63, he worked as an orderly in the hospital at Fort Dix, and of course, he was also 11 Bravo. Anybody that's in the Army is, they're marching, so they're 11 Bravos. The anecdotal, besides the chicken plucker, he said that in the reserves, they used to have excess ammo that they would shoot up, like 50 cal, and they would pull the trucks over, and they would unload all of the ammo and shoot it all up, all the excess ammo. And he said when they got tired shooting all this ammo up, then at times they used to bury the whole ammo boxes, really? In the ground. And so we laughed about that, how we both wish we could find those ammo boxes full of ammo. So you were a bad boy. Military awards. He's a bad boy. So get this, military awards, good conduct medal. Right. Expert in the rifle and a marksman in the pistol. In his civilian life, his reserve unit was 80 miles away from home, and so he worked in the reserves and also worked as a vending machine supervisor until 1972. In Newberry, is that the name of the machine?
No, that was the city.
Oh, Newberry is the city, not Massachusetts. Yes?
Connecticut.
Newberry. Yes, he had vending machines that he used to be like in the cafeterias, that they would go around, remember, and you'd open the door and pull your whatever food it was. And he was a supervisor of the vending machines. He said he does remember, side note, 63 when Kennedy unfortunately got shot. And I think a lot of us can remember where we were during that time. In 1974, he moved to a city called Torrance. But before he did that, in 73 of December, he went back to Greece and he married a friend of his sister-in-law, and they have 3 daughters and 2 boys. Is your wife here now?
2 daughters, 2 boys.
That's what I said. Your wife is where? And you did not give me her name. So it's my proud honor to introduce to you the chicken plucker. Nick Bowser. Bad boy got a good conduct. Whoa!
There you go.
Yeah, that's not from a good conduct.
Okay,
That's beautiful. They're all gorgeous.
we are.
Chicken plucker.
Take a picture next turn aside.
Okay. One more switch.
You guys did great work.
Is that amazing? That's one of the
Well,
best.
yes, ma'am. The last one. And I know we're rolling into our time. And I hate to say this, but this one, I don't speak this language. I've already had a talk with him. I asked him to come up and talk about himself. He said no. He's the baby of the group, Mr. Vaughn A. White. I have got to know him over the phone several times. Him and I have talked. He said, "Hey, Colonel, can you help me with some of my paperwork here that I'm trying to put with the VA?" I said, "Sure, but you tell him if I just put Mr. White on a path, I've never met out of the hundreds and hundreds of veterans that I've helped. This man, I just had to say, you need to do A, B, and C. I haven't heard back." So he knows what to do. He knows how to get things done. And I haven't had to help him whatsoever. So I'm reading his bio. He retired out of the Air Force, and like I shared with him, I don't speak Air Force, and I know that you do. So I'll give you one more chance. Would you like to read do yourself, or okay? Here we go. Here's the baby of the group, Mr. Vaughn A. White. Is White Zoe? Where is she?
Not here.
Okay. And date of birth, May 21st of 43 in Ohio. And he grew up in Johnsville, Ohio. He went to Madison High School in Mansville, and he has an associate degree from the Air Force. He has an associate degree from Cochise College. He has a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of New York in Albany. He has a Master's of Science degree from Information Systems Engineer from Western. And his military service is, he's done a lot in 24 years. United States Air Force, May 27 to 1960 to July the 1st of 84. His rank, Master Sergeant, E7. Duty stations, he enlisted May 26 of 60 in Columbus and went to Lackland for basic training, and you remember, don't you? And then he went to Biloxi, Mississippi for phase 2. That was phase 1 was 5 weeks, and then phase 2 is 3 weeks. Also in Biloxi, he went to, and this is how I have a hard time with the Air Force. He went to a technical school squadron for tech training, and then radio relay equipment. You see how I'm hurting myself here, huh? He ended up going to Detachment 7 in North Carolina from May 31st of 61 to 62. He ended up in Turkey, in the Tuzlak, Istanbul, Turkey, Detachment 85. And then he came back to go to McGuire on the 1611 Air Transport Wing. He was released then from active duty. And he came back, how much after that? 7 months. So he comes back into the Air Force, didn't have to do boot camp again, went to Columbus, Ohio, went back over to Istanbul, Detachment 85 this time, went to Georgia, Warner Robins, went to Detachment 20 at Athens, Greece, Homestead Air Force Base in Florida, and I'm sure your son, who I always like to gloat, is a 2-star general, and her son, I'm sure his bio is huge like this with all the places that, yes, so Air Force, pretty difficult. He ends up going to Athens, Greece. He went to Detachment 20 as I shared, and what's the remote tour you did? Araxis, Detachment 13. Back to Mississippi, to Keyser Air Force Base, and then he went to, looks like Germany, and then back to Sierra Vista, Arizona. It's difficult when you have so many assignments, and you end up having as many medals as he did. He definitely has a technical ability in his field. He has a meritorious service medal with 1 oak leaf cluster. He has an Air Force Commendation Medal with 2 oak leaf clustered. He has an Air Force Outstanding Unit Award with 3 oak leaf clusters. An Air Force Longevity Service with 4. So I used to call them, like for us in the Army or Coast Guard, they were ribbon, or they were lines. You see people that had a line on their sleeve. For every line is 4 years. So they didn't have that for the Air Force, so he ended up getting the ribbon with 4. So every oak leaf was 4. Army Good Conduct Medal, Air Force Good Conduct Medal. So the difference with the Army and the Air Force is that we didn't have an Air Force until 1947. And he was in before that. He ended up getting the Army, along with the Air Force, with 5 Good Conduct Medals. He has a Vietnam Service Medal, National Defense Service, Air Force Overseas Long Tour, Air Force Command NCO, Small Arms Expert Marksman. He does belong to the American Legion. He does belong to the DAV. His wife Zoe, and you've been married how long?
57 years.
57 years. That's wonderful. He has a lot of contractors. After he retired, he worked for the DOD, and you were at Kentron, Science Applications, Northrop, and I know I'm going through them fast, sir. And then you did retire from LA Air Force Base? Yes. Community service, Palos Verdes Bay Club Homeowners Association, past president. The Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, Department of Defense, Chief of Chaplain, Scroll of Honor. The adjunct faculty professor in the classroom and online for University of Phoenix in business. And the anecdotals. So he almost got killed. He was assigned to a mountaintop, which they used to go ahead and they were on the Mount Petraeus in Greece, and in performing a routine on a high-powered amplifier, the dead man switch, which was supposed to catch all of the excess electricity, was not cleaned properly. And so he came in contact with a high capacitor voltage, and it threw him back 10 feet. So thank God he survived out of that, and he says that he was blessed that he didn't lose consciousness or experience any other side effects. He only weighed 120 pounds, and on that same mountain, the winds would come up from both sides, and he shared how he almost was blown off of that ridge many times. I think more than anything else, he sent me an adjunct to all of his awards, and he said, Dan, would you share this with everyone? From the Department of the Army, Chief of Chaplains, he was presented as I shared the scroll of honor. And I just want to say that he takes his faith literally. He walks the walk and talks the talk. He was in church and he was always helping people out in the chaplain's office continuously throughout his whole 24 years. Can you attest to that he does that today?
Yes.
Yeah, so he definitely is, you know, he takes his faith seriously, like all of us, you know, continuously have a hard road, but we want to take our faith serious too. So it is my pleasure, after I went through and kind of butchered that, sir, but Vaughn A. White is now coming up to receive this book. Oh, yeah. Evangelos means what? Evangelos. And I'm sorry about the chow and how we ran over.
Yes, great, yeah. Oh, I love that.
They're all so beautiful, Mrs. Zobrist. No more long ones again. And Mary, Mary and Cecilia, did we miss, I know we had Peter and another veteran, correct? I think we have two more that go here, is that correct? So we're gonna have to definitely, I have to get a bio on you, and then we're presenting to you. There's one other, but I know Peter was one. All right, thank you very much. Mrs. Zobrist, thank you.
This concludes today's presentation of the quilts for the veterans.
Peter,
We salute you all, and we thank you for your
I did
service.
not get your bio, but we do have this other quilt. Would you like to get up and talk about yourself a little bit?
False alarm.
So again, forgive me for running over, chow getting cold.
Everybody keep eating.
So if you announce who you are and
Well, I've been privileged to serve. I've been privileged to serve in the United States Navy Reserves. I had 2 years active duty aboard an LST. I joined the Navy in September 1959. I was aboard ship for 2 years. I got very lucky. I served 6 months in the Mediterranean on maneuvers with our allies, mainly the British. The British are great sailors. I got very lucky, and I told them that I had Greek relatives in Athens, and they gave me 5 days leave. So I thanked them for that. It was more of a privilege and a vacation in many ways. I got to see all of the Mediterranean. I spent 8 months down in the Caribbean on maneuvers again. I was a yeoman, deck and gunnery yeoman. I kept track of all our special weapons. They called them special, but they had an N next to them, and no one was supposed to know We highlined our nuclear weapons before we ever went into a foreign port. Especially France didn't want us there. And my ship was an LST, 1171, one of the first of the class that was supposed to survive after a landing. We were a flat-bottom ship. We landed on shore. All our tanks, all our vehicles and ducks, we used to call them, went along shore. We made landings in Libya, even Retimon Creek. So I got to see a lot, and the Navy served me more than I think I served them. I was very privileged to be in the service. I think I'll cut it short. Thank you.
Thank you, that's great.
Go away. All eyes forward.
That's really nice.
It's upside down.
It looked good even upside down.
It looks good. Good one, John.
Okay.
Once again, thank you for your service. We salute all of our veterans.